welcome to our Disruptive by Design podcast. I'm Kimberly Underwood, Director of Digital News Media at Signal Media, the official news outlet of AFCEA International. I'd like to welcome you to this episode where I get to sit down and speak with the President and CEO of AFCEA. Now, anytime you get a chance to speak with your boss's boss's boss, it's a great day, especially when it's retired Army Lieutenant General Susan Lawrence. We're so lucky to have her at the helm of AFCEA. She's really a powerful combination of being a formidable leader that's also very graceful and kind and approachable. She's held several groundbreaking roles, including being the first female CIO and G6 of the Army. And this spring, General Lawrence was recently recognized for her efforts. We got to see her be inducted in the Hall of Fame of the U.S. Army's Women's Foundation. So during this episode, she gets to share her experiences, how she got started in the military, along the way in her career as she navigated the world of information technology and military communication systems. And she really was a disruptive by design leader going along in her career. So she'll offer some advice to today's emerging leaders. So thanks for tuning in. And here's General Lawrence.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kimberly Underwood, Director of Digital News Media here at AFCEA International's Signal Media. And I'm so thrilled to sit down today with my boss. We're so privileged to have Lieutenant General Susan Lawrence, Army retired, who's our President and CEO of AFCEA. So thanks for joining me. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, thank you, Kimberly. I appreciate this opportunity. And I'm so proud of you and what all you do for us in our communications team. Our team came back from Rocky Mountain, said you were the first one in and the last one out. And telling AFCEA's story is so important and getting the message out there. And you're really critical to that.
Well, thank you. And I feel lucky we have you as our president. Kind of why did you come to AFCEA and kind of what is your role and what's on your plate these days?
Yeah, it's an exciting time to be the president and CEO of AFCEA International. I, as you know, had retired to Florida when I was recruited back here, and it was a hard decision to come back into the workforce, but I am so honored and pleased that I did it. It's so exciting and rewarding, and especially now, it is really important that we bring industry and academia and the government, military together with everything that's going on around the world. Not only with the current situations in Ukraine and the threats that we're looking at elsewhere, but it's an exciting time, and that's what the story we're trying to tell with technology. We are really moving faster than we ever had before in the introductions of critical capabilities, and I think AFCEA is key in getting that message out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And then how did you first get involved in the military when you were younger?
Yeah, that's a great story. I graduated from high school when I was 17 years old, and I was a waitress in the local cafe, and I didn't have good grades. My parents didn't have the means to send me to school, even a trade school, and unfortunately, my boyfriend was killed my homecoming weekend of my senior year. So I was kind of lost as to what was going to be next in my life. And so a close friend of mine and I decided we were going to join a buddy program and join a service together. And unfortunately, that recruiter was not a good recruiter, and we decided we did not want to go in that service. And my friend Denise wanted to join the Air Force and see the world. I wasn't as brave, so I wanted to join the Army and go to Fort Leavenworth, which was 4 hours from my hometown, so I could still get home. And as it turned out, Denise got Omaha, Nebraska, 2 hours from her hometown, and I got Alaska. So that was the beginning of my services and learning you go where the Army tells you to go.
Right, and you needed that bravery. Aw. And then, I guess, when did you learn about AFCEA and how did you get involved in it?
Yeah, so I was enlisted for a number of years. When I enlisted, I was a stenographer. The old-fashioned kind, the pencil and pad, and not the machine. And I worked hard, and I worked for some amazing bosses who saw things in me that I did not see in me. And the one boss I was working for at the time, the Deputy Commanding General of 18th Airborne Corps, said, "You need to go to college and you need to be an officer." And I wasn't convinced. I loved being a non-commissioned officer. I was jumping out of airplanes, but I started going to school nights and weekends, and I won the Green to Gold Scholarship and was commissioned into the Signal Corps at the time. So we went to our basic officers course at Fort Gordon, Georgia, and we were all encouraged to join AFCEA as our professional organization. And so I did, and I absolutely loved the mission. I volunteered for positions on the chapter there. I started out with scholarships, which we're now doing, which I'm trying to even increase, because it was so important work that we were doing. And I stayed with AFCEA my entire career as an officer. And as even before coming into this position, I was the vice chairman of our board of directors. So I've always had a position. And I think that's important for our young leaders to understand. Find your right networking professional organization, because it will help you along the way.
Right, sure. And can you talk a little bit, what was it like to be in the Signal Corps, and how did you learn to kind of love technology and understand its advancements to kind of help you further in your career?
Yeah, I'm going to laugh at that one, because my undergraduate degree was psychology. And so I was a psych major in a technical field. But I learned early on that building a team and building the right technical team around me was so critical. So I understood where my strengths were, but where my gaps were. And in any job that we go into, be humble enough to understand where your gaps are so that you can build that team and bring in the strength that you need to do those jobs. And I've done that in every one of my assignments since I was a lieutenant. You'll see some great professionals that have gone with me from different assignments, because I will, if I get somewhere and I have a chance, I'll reach out and bring them in. And that's what's important about building a team, because that's what the Army's all about. You can't do things on your own. You're part of a greater organization and a team to get the mission done.
Right, I guess understanding that people aspect is foundational to then being able to do technology. Because once you have the team, I guess you could do anything, really.
Right.
Imagine.
Right.
And then you were the first female CIO of the Army. I think that's pretty amazing. Tell us about that and kind of, how did that come about, and what was that like, and what were your responsibilities at the time?
Right. It was, I am honored that General Casey, who was the Chief of Staff of the Army at the time, selected me. I had worked with him before. I was in the theater with him. And I just was surprised, because I was at Commanding General at NETCOM out at Fort Huachuca, and that's usually kind of where you end your career, and I was prepared to do that. And so when asked to come in to be the CIO G6, I was extremely honored that I was considered. And it turned out I actually was the first woman CIO in the Department of Defense from all the services.
Right, not just that.
But again, it's being part of the team and understanding the importance that everybody brings to that mission there in the Pentagon and what we have to do, because you do it with everybody there.
Right, and now they've split that role, the CIO and the G6, but you basically were wearing two hats. Right. Was that challenging, or?
No, and I understand the decision they've made, but I felt blessed that I was both the CIO G6, because there was $1 to spend. I only had to argue with myself and not have to share it with somebody else. But the roles are very critical. In the CIO, I worked for the Secretary of the Army and his priorities, and then as the G6, was responsible for the manning and the training and the equipment of the forces, signal forces, for the Chief of Staff of the Army. So both roles were awesome, and I'm glad I got to do both.
And then AFCEA has a kind of a sub-community called Emerging Leaders for people under 40.
Right.
I myself am no longer in that generation, but I love that AFCEA has that. Can you tell us about Emerging Leaders and why it's important from your view?
I am so proud of our emerging leaders and everywhere we go. But if we as a team understand how important it is to bring up the generation behind us, as you said, and they are so smart and technically astute. And when I put a panel together with emerging leaders, it's just fascinating to hear their thoughts and how they approach problems and situations. And emerging leaders are very important to us here in AFCEA, and we feel an obligation to make sure we get them the resources they need to network and team within the AFCEA family. And the folks that we've had lead that group have been just amazing, and they've gone on and been very successful in their own careers. And it's fun watching them as they graduate out from emerging leaders, becoming mentors and coaches of those still in.
Right,
So,
sure.
yeah.
And then any other advice for young people today? What would you say to them? How can they advance in their careers or learn about technology or, advance in the military?
Right, and that's kind of what I talked about is, one is find your professional organization and become a member. And not just be associated with them, but be a member and be a participant. Because I can't tell you how many mentors and coaches I came across in my time in AFCEA. And every time I would move to another duty station, I would find the local AFCEA chapter because I'd be home immediately with the same thoughts and missions and priorities of what AFCEA brought to the government. And that's why I stayed with them for so long, and I volunteered in all the positions that I did because it gave back to me more than I think I gave to them.
Right, sure.
Yeah.
And anything else you wanted to share?
Yeah, with our young ones, I'm excited for them. I am amazed and absolutely confident of their skill sets, and they will move us forward as we make these great technology leaps. They understand it. I remember our young emerging leaders doing a panel out at Indo-Pacific on 5G, and I walked away from that panel knowing and understanding more of our priorities and where we were going by listening to those young ones because they got it, and that was excited about them. The other thing I'd like to add is it's been 9 years since I took my uniform off. I couldn't be more proud of the women serving today in uniform, and not only in uniform, but our civilian workforce. How committed they are, how dedicated they are, how they just knock down barriers. And it's such an honor to watch them, to see the first woman ranger in our organizations, in our formations, is absolutely exciting and phenomenal. And I look forward to continuing to cheerlead for them, to be a part of AFCEA and be there to support them as they move forward.
Right, yeah, that's amazing. And I love hearing, women coming up in the ranks like that. And I didn't know that about the Rangers. And I know it makes a stronger force when we have both men and women coming forward like that. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So,
and that's another thing that I've been working hard here in AFCEA is IDEA, inclusion, diversity, equity, and access. Because I remember when I was selected for this position and the announcement came out, the first woman CEO in the 75-year history of AFCEA. And someone wrote on LinkedIn, won't it be great when we no longer have to say the first? And that really resonated with me. And so I said, across the community that we touch, 130 different chapters around the world, very diverse organization, is, what can we do to better promote inclusion, diversity, equity, and access? And so we've stood up an advisory council here, we've stood up a committee, and we've already done our first event, a panel with one of the local chapters. And so I'm excited about continuing to promote that and getting behind it.
right. Well, Well, that's amazing. Thank you for all your efforts.
Thank you.
And thank you for talking to me today.
Thank you, Kimberly. I appreciate it.